The morning Jackson Steele kissed his wife goodbye for the last time, the sky was the color of honey. Earth's orbital traffic hummed its usual symphony of cargo haulers and passenger shuttles, painting silver streaks across the amber atmosphere. He pressed his lips to Elena's forehead, breathing in her vanilla perfume one final time before heading to the spaceport. She was carrying their first child, just 3 months along, her hand resting protectively over her still flat belly. "Promise me you'll be back for the ultrasound," she whispered against his chest. 2 weeks, he murmured into her dark hair. Just a routine patrol sweep around Jupiter's moons. Nothing dangerous. If he'd known those would be his last words to her, he would have said so much more. Captain Jackson Steele was piloting the Scout, ship defiant through the asteroid belt when Earth died. The distress signal came through as static first, then screaming, then nothing at all. By the time he'd turned his ship around and burned hard for home, there was nothing left but cooling debris and the metallic taste of ash in the recycled air. 9,900 ships had come like a plague of locusts, blotting out the stars. They were massive things, each one the size of a city, their hulls black as the void between galaxies. No warning, no demands, no mercy. Earth's defense grid lasted exactly 17 minutes before it went silent forever. Jackson floated in his cockpit, staring at the display screen that showed nothing where his home used to be, the planet that had given birth to Mozart and Shakespeare, to his wife's laughter and his unborn child's heartbeat, was now just radioactive dust spiraling into the sun. His hands shook as he tried to process the readings. 38 billion people gone in less than an hour. The comm system crackled to life. A woman's voice, steady despite the terror bleeding through the static. "This is Dr. Zara Quinn aboard Research Station Prometheus. If anyone is receiving this transmission, please respond. We have survivors." Jackson's throat felt like sandpaper, but he managed to key his transmitter. "This is Captain Jackson Steele, Earth Defense Corps. I'm alive." "Thank God," came the reply, and he could hear the relief flooding through her words. "We're broadcasting on emergency frequency 77 Alpha. Can you reach us?" The research station Prometheus had been studying deep space anomalies at the edge of the solar system when the invasion began. Dr. Zara Quinn had watched through the station's telescopes as her world burned, recording every moment with the cold precision of a scientist even as her heart shattered like glass. She was a xenobiologist, had spent her career dreaming of the day humanity would make first contact with intelligent alien life. She'd never imagined it would come in the form of genocide. When Jackson's ship docked with Prometheus 6 hours later, Zara was waiting in the airlock. She was tall and graceful, with auburn hair pulled back in an impractical ponytail and green eyes that held depths of sorrow he recognized in his own mirror. Her lab coat was stained with coolant fluid from emergency repairs, and there was a small cut above her left eyebrow where flying debris had caught her during the station's desperate evasive maneuvers. "How many?" was the first thing she asked when his helmet retracted. "Survivors?" Jackson's voice was rough with grief. "I've picked up maybe 24 signals across the entire system. Most went quiet after the first few hours." Zara nodded, her scientific mind already working. "We have 43 people aboard Prometheus, researchers, graduate students, maintenance crew. None of us are soldiers." "Neither am I anymore," Jackson said quietly. "There's no Earth Defense Corps left to serve." Their eyes met in that moment, two souls recognizing the same wound in each other. The loss of everything they'd ever known, everyone they'd ever loved. But also something else. A spark of defiance. A refusal to let humanity's story end in the cold darkness between stars. "We need to move," Zara said, her voice taking on the crisp authority of someone used to making life or death decisions in crisis situations. "Their ships are sweeping the system, hunting down survivors. Prometheus is too big, too obvious. They'll find us eventually." "Where can we go?" Jackson asked. "I've been analyzing their search patterns," she replied, leading him through the station's corridors. The walls hummed with the subtle vibration of life support systems pushed to their limits. "They're focusing on established shipping lanes, known bases, anywhere humans are supposed to be. But there are dead zones, Places we've never bothered to explore because they're too dangerous or too worthless. Places they might not think to look. The station's common area had been converted into a refugee camp. Men and women of all ages huddled around portable heaters, sharing ration packs and staring at the viewport that showed nothing but empty space where Earth's star used to shine. Children clung to their parents, too shocked to cry. The silence was deafening. "These people aren't fighters," Jackson observed. "No," Zara agreed, "but they're brilliant. Dr. Hassan there," she pointed to an elderly man hunched over a tablet, "revolutionized plasma physics. Maria Santos developed the quantum communications array that's keeping us in touch with other survivor groups. We may not be soldiers, but we're not helpless." Over the next several hours, as Prometheus limped toward the coordinates Zara had identified, a rogue planetoid drifting in the space between Saturn and Uranus, Jackson found himself drawn to the xenobiologist like a moth to flame. She moved through the station with quiet confidence, checking on the injured, coordinating repairs, analyzing data from the alien ships with the focused intensity of someone determined to find answers in the ashes of their world. "You're not what I expected," he told her during a brief break in the evacuation preparations. "What did you expect?" she asked, not looking up from the alien energy signatures she was studying. "I don't know. Someone more broken, I guess. After what we've all lost." Zara's hand stilled on her tablet. When she looked at him, her green eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I am broken, Captain. We all are. But broken doesn't mean useless. Sometimes the places where we crack are where the light gets in." Their destination was a lifeless rock barely 50 kilometers across, its surface pocked with craters and covered in ice that hadn't seen sunlight in millions of years. But it had caves, deep ones that would hide their heat signatures and mineral deposits that would interfere with most scanning equipment. More importantly, it was somewhere the aliens wouldn't think to look. Too small, too insignificant, too barren to support human life. "Home sweet home," Jackson muttered as they began the delicate process of moving Prometheus's survivors to the hidden base they were carving out of solid rock. "It's not home," Zara said softly, standing beside him in the cargo bay as they watched the first shuttle load of refugees disappear into the asteroid's crevices. "But it's a place to heal, a place to plan, a place to remember who we are and decide who we're going to become." The work was backbreaking. 43 people with hand tools and portable fusion cutters, hollowing out living spaces from ancient stone. But there was something almost therapeutic about it. The simple primal act of building shelter, creating safety with their own hands. Jackson found himself working alongside Zara more and more often, their partnership developing naturally as they coordinated the construction efforts. She was beautiful when she concentrated, her brow furrowed in thought, strands of auburn hair escaping her ponytail to frame her face. More than once he caught himself staring and had to force his attention back to whatever task was at hand. It felt wrong somehow to notice her beauty when the whole world had just died. But grief and desire, he was learning, could coexist in the human heart with painful intensity. "Tell me about your family," she said one evening as they shared a ration pack in what would eventually become the base's command center. Jackson's throat tightened. "My wife Elena, she was pregnant. Just 3 months. We were going to name the baby Christopher if it was a boy, Charlotte if it was a girl." He took a shuddering breath. "She made this sound when she laughed, like water bubbling over stones. I used to think it was the most beautiful music in the universe." Zara reached out and covered his hand with hers. Her fingers were warm, calloused from the construction work, real and alive in ways that made his chest ache with longing and guilt in equal measure. "She sounds wonderful," Zara said softly. "What about you? Any family?" "My parents died in a transport accident when I was 19. No siblings. I put everything I had into my research, my career. I always told myself there would be time for love later, when my work was more established, when I had something to offer someone." She laughed bitterly. "Turns out later never comes." They sat in comfortable silence, sharing grief and warmth in the cold asteroid night. Outside, the stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, unchanged by the death of one small blue world in an unremarkable solar system. But here, in this tiny bubble of light and life carved from dead stone, something new was being born. "We can't stay hidden forever," Jackson said eventually. "No," Zara agreed. "But we can survive long enough to figure out how to fight back. I've been studying the data from their ships, their energy signatures, their movement patterns. They're not invincible. They're just very, very good at what they do. Which is extinction," she said simply. "They're not conquerors, Jackson. They don't want our resources or our territory. They want us gone, completely and utterly, which means they'll keep hunting until every last human is dead. Then we'd better make sure that never happens." Their eyes met again, and this time neither looked away. The attraction that had been building between them crystallized into something deeper, more profound, not just desire, though that was certainly there, but recognition. Two people who had lost everything finding something worth fighting for in each other. When Zara leaned forward and kissed him, soft and tentative in the artificial twilight of their makeshift base, it felt like the first sunrise after the longest night. Her lips were warm and tasted faintly of recycled air and the protein bars that had become their primary diet. But they were alive, gloriously and defiantly alive, and that was enough. They broke apart slowly, breathing hard, foreheads touching in the intimate space between them. "Is this wrong?" Jackson whispered. "With everyone we loved gone, with the world ended?" "I don't know," Zara admitted. "But I know that life finds a way to continue even in the darkest places. Maybe especially in the darkest places. And if we're going to survive, if we're going to fight back, we need reasons to keep going beyond just revenge." "Hope," he said. "Understanding. Love," she corrected. "Hope is just wishful thinking. Love is what makes us human." Over the following days, as their tiny base took shape and more survivors trickled in from across the solar system, Jackson and Zara became the unofficial leaders of their desperate community. She was the scientist, analyzing every scrap of data they could gather about their enemies. He was the protector, training volunteers in the rudiments of combat and ship handling with whatever weapons they could cobble together from salvaged parts. But in the quiet moments between crisis and catastrophe, they were simply two people falling in love amid the ruins of everything they'd ever known. They shared stolen kisses in empty corridors, whispered confessions in the dark spaces between sleeping shifts, found in each other's arms a warmth that had nothing to do with body heat and everything to do with the fierce determination to remain human in an inhuman galaxy. The night before their first reconnaissance mission, a desperate plan to intercept alien communications and maybe, just maybe, find a weakness they could exploit, Zara came to Jackson's quarters carrying a bottle of synthesized wine she'd managed to brew from the station's recycling systems. "Thought we should have a proper toast," she said, settling beside him on the narrow bunk that served as his bed. "To what?" he asked, accepting the cup she offered. "To the end of the world," she said with a smile that was equal parts sadness and defiance. "And to whatever comes after." They drank in silence, tasting the harsh sweetness of fermented hope on their tongues. Outside their tiny sanctuary, the universe was vast and cold and hostile. But here, in this moment, with her hand in his and her heartbeat steady against his chest, Jackson felt something he hadn't experienced since Earth died. He felt human. 3 months after Earth's death, Jackson Steele had learned that love could bloom even in the cold vacuum between stars. The asteroid base they'd carved from dead rock now housed over 200 survivors, refugees who'd found their way to the hidden sanctuary through encrypted transmissions and desperate hope. What had started as a desperate hiding place had become something more, a community, a family, a flickering candle of human defiance in the endless dark. The base had grown organically, tunnels branching like veins through the asteroid's core. The main cavern served as both command center and gathering place, its walls lined with salvaged equipment and jury-rigged systems that hummed with barely contained energy. Hydroponic gardens provided fresh food, while workshops rang with the constant sound of metal on metal as survivors turned scrap into weapons, tools, and hope. Dr. Zara Quinn had become the unofficial leader of their scientific efforts, her xenobiology background proving invaluable as they tried to understand their enemies. Her laboratory occupied a natural chamber deep in the asteroid's heart, protected by layers of rock and electromagnetic shielding. Banks of computers analyzed captured alien transmissions, their screens casting blue light across her face as she worked through another sleepless night. "You need to rest," Jackson said, entering the lab with a steaming cup of what passed for coffee in their makeshift world. Zara looked up from her displays, auburn hair falling across her eyes. Dark circles shadowed her cheeks, but her green gaze was sharp with discovery. "I think I've found something. Look at this." She gestured to a holographic display showing the energy signature of an alien vessel. The pattern pulsed with geometric precision, waves of force rippling through three-dimensional space in patterns that seemed almost organic. "It's beautiful," Jackson admitted, settling beside her. The scent of her hair, clean despite their limited water recycling, made his chest tighten with familiar longing. "It's more than beautiful," Zara said, her voice trembling with excitement. "It's biological. These ships aren't just machines, Jackson. They're alive, or at least partially alive. Biomechanical hybrids that grow rather than being built." Jackson studied the display, his tactical mind already racing through the implications. If they're alive, they can die. Exactly. But more than that, if they're alive, they have needs, weaknesses, instincts we might be able to exploit. She pulled up another screen, this one showing communication intercepts they'd captured during recent reconnaissance missions. "I've been analyzing their transmissions, and there's something strange about the patterns. They're not just tactical communications, there's an underlying structure that resembles—" "What?" "Music," she said softly. "Or maybe poetry. Something artistic, creative. These beings aren't just destroyers, Jackson. They're complex." Before he could respond, the base's proximity alarms began to wail. Emergency lighting bathed the laboratory in red, and the intercom crackled to life with the voice of Tobias Kane, their chief engineer. "All hands to stations. We have incoming vessels, Vector 77 Mark III. They're moving fast and broadcasting human identification codes." Jackson was already moving, muscle memory from his military training taking over. "Stay here," he told Zara. "Keep working on those transmissions. If we don't make it back—" She caught his arm, her fingers strong and, "Sure. You'll make it back, you have to." Their lips met in a kiss that tasted of desperation and determination, tongues dancing together with the fierce passion of people who knew each day might be their last. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard, desire sparking between them like electricity. "I love you," Jackson said, the words coming easily now after months of sharing their lives, their fears, their dreams for a future that seemed increasingly impossible. "I love you too," Zara whispered. "Now go. Our people need you." The command center was chaos when Jackson arrived. Tobias Kane stood at the main console, his prosthetic leg, a souvenir from a construction accident on Europa, gleaming dully in the emergency lighting. Beside him, Navigator Luna Reyes worked frantically at the communications array, her dark hair pulled back in a severe bun that accentuated the sharp angles of her face. "Report," Jackson commanded, slipping into the role of military commander with practiced ease. "3 ships, definitely human design but heavily modified," Luna said without looking up from her screens. "They're broadcasting survivor codes, but the modifications are unusual. Alien technology integrated into human hulls." Tobias nodded grimly. "Could be a trap, or could be other survivors who've learned to adapt. Either way, they're headed straight for us. Time to intercept? 47 minutes at current speed." Jackson studied the tactical display, his mind racing through possibilities. "Luna, try to raise them on emergency frequencies. I want to know who they are and what they want before they get close enough to threaten the base." The next few minutes stretched like hours as they waited for a response. When it finally came, the voice that emerged from the speakers was human, but changed, roughened by months of survival in the void. This is Commander Ravi Patel aboard the vessel Nemesis. We're survivors from the Titan colonies seeking shelter and alliance. We have information about the enemy that you need to hear. Jackson exchanged glances with his companions. The Titan colonies had been among the first to fall after Earth, their mining operations too visible to hide from the alien sweep. If these were genuine survivors, they might have intelligence worth the risk. Nemesis, this is Captain Jackson Steele. You'll forgive us if we're cautious. We've learned that trust is a luxury we can't afford. Understood, Captain. We're transmitting our scanner logs and biological signatures now. You'll see we're human, though we've had to make some adaptations to survive. The data package that arrived moments later made Jackson's blood run cold. The 3 ships approaching their base weren't just modified, they were infected. Alien biotech had been grafted onto human vessels, creating hybrid monstrosities that pulsed with the same organic energy signatures Zara had identified in the enemy fleet. It's a trap, Luna breathed, her face pale in the display light. Maybe, Jackson said slowly. Or maybe it's something else. Tobias, bring the base to full alert. Charge all weapons and prepare for combat, but don't fire unless I give the order. Sir, if those ships are compromised, then we'll deal with it. But if they're genuine survivors who found a way to turn the enemy's own weapons against them, we need to know. The next 30 minutes were the longest of Jackson's life. He stood on the observation deck, watching. Through reinforced transparisteel as 3 ships approached their hidden base, the vessels were beautiful in their own terrifying way. Sleek human designs wrapped in alien growth that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. They moved with organic grace, their hulls rippling like living skin. Captain, Luna's voice came through, his comms tight with tension. They're requesting permission to dock. Grant it, Jackson decided. But keep all weapons trained on them. First sign of trouble, blow them out of space. Commander Ravi Patel was a tall, lean man with skin that had taken on a faint luminescent quality, as if tiny stars had been embedded beneath the surface. His eyes were still human, still warm with intelligence and compassion, but there was something else there too, a depth that spoke of contact with alien consciousness. Thank you for trusting us, he said as he stepped through the airlock, flanked by 2 companions who bore similar marks of transformation. I know how we must appear. You appear, Jackson said carefully, like people who've been changed by contact with the enemy. Changed, yes, but not conquered. Patel smiled, and the expression was entirely human despite the strangeness of his appearance. We've learned to speak their language, Captain, literally and figuratively. And what we've learned will change everything. The briefing that followed lasted hours, with Zara joining them as they delved into the implications of Patel's discoveries. The survivors from Titan had been captured during the initial assault, taken aboard alien vessels for study. Instead of being killed, they'd been subjected to a process that was part interrogation, part biological integration. They don't just want to destroy us, Patel explained, his transformed features animated with the passion of discovery. They want to understand us, to learn from us, and in learning, they've revealed their own nature. Which is? Zara asked, her scientific curiosity overriding her caution. They're refugees, Patel said simply. Survivors of their own apocalypse, fleeing from something that destroyed their home galaxy. They've been traveling for millions of years, consuming civilizations not out of malice but out of desperate need. They feed on consciousness, on the creative spark that makes a species truly intelligent. Jackson felt ice form in his veins. They're eating our minds. In a sense, yes, but the process isn't always fatal. Sometimes, if the consciousness is strong enough, if it fights back in the right way, a synthesis occurs. The alien consciousness learns from the human one, and the human consciousness learns from the alien. That's what happened to us. He gestured to his companions, their skin glowing softly in the chamber's dim light. We're still human, Captain, but we're also something more. We can understand their communications, predict their movements, even influence their ships to some degree. We've become bridges between two species. And you think we can use this against them? Jackson asked. I think, Patel said quietly, we can use this to save both our species. The entity that's chasing them across the galaxy, it's still out there, still hunting. If we can find a way to work together, to combine human creativity with their biotechnology, we might be able to stand against it. Zara leaned forward, her eyes bright with possibility. The musical patterns in their communications. You're saying they're not just tactical instructions? They're emotional expressions, Patel confirmed. Fear, longing, hope, despair. These beings feel as deeply as we do, Dr. Quinn. They're not monsters. They're terrified refugees who've forgotten how to be anything but survivors. The debate that followed was fierce, with opinions divided between those who saw an opportunity for unprecedented cooperation and those who viewed any contact with the aliens as tantamount to suicide. But as the hours passed, a consensus began to emerge. They were too few, too weak, too scattered to defeat the alien fleet through conventional warfare. But if they could find a way to communicate, to understand, to bridge the gap between species, it's insane, Tobias muttered. But his eyes gleamed with the light of someone contemplating an engineering challenge that had never been attempted before. The best plans usually are, Luna added, her navigator's mind already plotting courses through possibility space. Jackson looked at Zara, seeing his own mixture of hope and terror reflected in her green eyes. What do you think? I think, she said slowly, that this is why we survived, not to fight a war of extinction, but to find a third option, to choose evolution over annihilation. That night, as the base hummed with the activity of desperate preparation, Jackson and Zara found themselves alone in the observation lounge. The chamber's transparasteel walls offered a view of the asteroid field beyond, countless rocks tumbling through the void like the shattered dreams of a dead world. Are we making the right choice? Jackson asked, his arm around Zara's shoulders as they watched the stars wheel overhead. I don't know, she admitted, her body warm against his. But I know that sitting here hiding while they hunt down the last survivors isn't working. We need to try something different. Even if it gets us all killed? Even then. She turned in his arms, her face serious in the starlight. Jackson, I've been thinking about what you said the night we met. About your wife, about the baby you lost. I can't replace them and I wouldn't want to try. But what we have, what we've built together, it's something worth fighting for. He cupped her face in his hands, thumbs tracing the elegant lines of her cheekbones. I love you, Zara. Not as a replacement for what I lost, but as something new. Something that gives me hope for the future. When they kissed, it was with the desperate passion of people who knew they might not have many more chances. Her hands, tangled in his hair, pulling him closer, while his fingers found the fastenings of her jumpsuit, they made love there in the observation lounge, surrounded by the silent testimony of a billion stars, their bodies moving together with the primal rhythm of life asserting itself against the cold indifference of space. Afterward, they lay entwined, on the narrow couch, sharing warmth and whispered promises in the artificial twilight of their sanctuary. Whatever happens, Zara murmured against his chest, I want you to know that loving you has been the best part of surviving the end of the world. Even if the world didn't really end? Jackson asked, stroking her hair. Even if this is just the beginning of something new? Especially then, she said, and kissed him again, soft and sweet and full of hope for tomorrows that no longer seemed impossible. The next morning brought new challenges as they began the delicate process of establishing communication with the alien fleet. Patel and his transformed companions worked alongside Zara and her team, their hybrid consciousness bridging the gap between human science and alien biotechnology. The first tentative exchanges were crude, more emotion than meaning, but gradually patterns began to emerge. The aliens called themselves the Keth Moran, which translated roughly as the Seekers of Light. They had indeed fled their home galaxy, in the face of an apocalyptic threat, a force they knew only as the Silence, an entity that consumed not just matter and energy but the very concept of existence itself. For eons they had wandered the void, feeding on the consciousness of lesser species not out of cruelty but out of desperate need. They were trying to preserve something, to carry forward the spark of awareness that the silence sought to extinguish. They're not evil, Zara explained to the assembled survivors in the base's main chamber. They're traumatized. They've been running for so long, fighting for so long, that they've forgotten there might be another way. And you think we can remind them? Asked Dr. Sarah Chen, the base's chief medical officer. I think, Zara said, that we can show them what they've been looking for all along. A partnership, a synthesis, a way to be more than the sum of our parts. The plan that emerged was audacious in its simplicity. They would approach the Kethmaran not as enemies but as potential allies, offering to share their knowledge and creativity in exchange for the aliens' biotechnology and cosmic perspective. Together they might be able to face the silence when it inevitably arrived in their galaxy. But first, they had to survive the meeting. As Jackson prepared his ship for the most dangerous diplomatic mission in human history, Zara came to him one last time. Her face was pale but determined, her green eyes bright with unshed tears. I'm coming with you, she said. Absolutely not. This is too dangerous. This is exactly why I need to be there, she interrupted. You need a xenobiologist who understands their biology, their psychology, and... She hesitated, then pressed on. I need to be there because I can't lose you, Jackson. Not now. Not when we're so close to finding a way forward. He wanted to argue, to protect her, to keep her safe in the relative security of the base. But looking into her eyes, he saw the same determination that had kept her going through the darkest days after Earth's fall. She wasn't asking for protection. She was offering partnership. Together? He asked. Together, she confirmed, and sealed the promise with a kiss that tasted of courage and hope, and the infinite possibility of love. As their ship launched from the asteroid base heading toward a rendezvous with forces that had already destroyed one world, Jackson felt something he hadn't experienced in months. Not just love, though that burned bright in his chest. Not just hope, though that too filled his heart. He felt the electric thrill of humanity reaching for something greater than itself, stretching toward a future that promised transformation rather than mere survival. The stars wheeled overhead, ancient and eternal, witnesses to the birth of something new. The Kethmoran mothership, Siralith, hung in space like a living cathedral, its bioluminescent hull pulsing with the rhythm of an alien heartbeat. Jackson's hands trembled slightly on the controls as their small diplomatic vessel approached the massive structure. Its organic curves and flowing lines, unlike anything human engineering had ever conceived. Beside him, Zara monitored the alien, communication frequencies, her face bathed in the blue glow of her instruments. They're singing, she whispered, wonder evident in her voice. The entire ship is singing. The harmonies that flowed through their speakers were hauntingly beautiful, voices that seemed to echo from the depths of space itself, carrying emotions too complex for human language. Grief and hope intertwined, loss and longing dancing together, in melodies that made Jackson's chest ache with recognition. These weren't the sounds of conquerors. They were the songs of a species that had forgotten how to be anything but alone. Incoming transmission, reported Luna Reyes from the communications station. Her dark eyes were wide with nervous energy as she worked to establish a stable connection. It's different from before, more complex. The holographic display shimmered to life, revealing a figure that was both alien and strangely familiar. The Kethmoran ambassador was tall and graceful, her form humanoid but elongated, with skin that shifted through subtle patterns of silver and gold. Her eyes were vast and dark, holding depths that spoke of eons of wandering through the void. I am Veltara of the Kethmoran, she said, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated in frequencies human ears could barely perceive. You are the ones who have learned our song. Commander Patel stepped forward, his own transformed features allowing him to serve as interpreter. The bioluminescent patterns beneath his skin pulsed in rhythm with the aliens, creating a visual language that transcended words. We are, he replied, speaking both in English and the complex harmonic frequencies of Kethmoran. We wish to understand. To find a path forward that doesn't end in extinction for either of our species. Veltara's expression, if it could be called that, shifted subtly. You speak of paths, but you do not understand the nature of our journey. We have traveled for 7 million cycles, seeking that which cannot be found. The silence follows, and before it, all consciousness becomes void. Zara leaned forward, her scientific curiosity overriding her fear. What is the silence? What are you running from? The alien's form shuddered, patterns of deep purple flowing across her skin like spilled ink. It is the ending of all stories, the final note that drowns out every song. It consumed our birth stars, our nursery worlds, the very concept of our existence. We fled because we carried within us the last echoes of 10 billion voices, and we could not bear to let them fade into nothingness. Understanding bloomed in Jackson's mind like a terrible flower. You're not invaders. You're refugees carrying the memories of your entire civilization. As you carry yours, Veltara replied, her gaze settling on him with uncomfortable intensity. We sensed it in your species, the same spark, the same desperate creativity that once filled our worlds with light. We thought to preserve it, to add your voices to the choir of the lost. But you resisted in ways we had not encountered before. Because we're not ready to die, Zara said fiercely. Because we still believe there's something worth fighting for. Love, Jackson added quietly, his hand finding Zara's. Hope. The future we're building together. Veltara's form stilled, her pattern shifting to deep blues and greens, colors that somehow conveyed deep contemplation. Show me, she said finally. Show me this thing you call hope. What followed was the strangest diplomatic exchange in human history. Through Patel's translation, Jackson and Zara shared their story, the fall of Earth, their meeting in the darkness, the love that had grown between them amid the ruins of everything they'd known. They spoke of the community they'd built on the asteroid, of children being born even in the shadow of extinction, of art and music and poetry created by people who refused to surrender their humanity to despair. As they spoke, Veltara's patterns grew brighter, more complex. Other Kethmoran joined the transmission, scientists, warriors, artists, all drawn by the strange new harmonies emerging from the human ship. Your species creates meaning where none existed before, one of the newcomers observed, her voice like crystal bells in a gentle wind. You forge bonds that transcend individual survival. This is what we lost when the silence began its work. Then help us keep it alive, Zara pleaded, not by consuming us, but by joining with us. Your biotechnology, our creativity, your cosmic perspective, our stubborn refusal to give up. Together, we might be able to face whatever's coming. The debate that followed lasted hours, conducted in harmonies that made the human listeners weep without understanding why. The Kethmoran were divided. Some saw in humanity a chance for redemption, while others argued that the silence would only follow faster if they delayed their journey by forming attachments. Finally, Veltara spoke again, her voice heavy with the weight of eons. There is a way to test this union you propose. The silence has found us. Our scouts detected its vanguard entering your galaxy 3 cycles past. It will arrive at this system within the span of your single solar revolution. If your species can stand with us against the ending of all things, if your hope can kindle new light in the darkness, we'll fight, Jackson said without hesitation. We'll stand with you. Even knowing that victory may be impossible, that we may all be consumed together. Zara's hand tightened in his, her green eyes blazing with determination. Especially then, because that's what love is, choosing to face the darkness together rather than alone. The Kethmoran's pattern suddenly exploded into brilliant gold, and for the first time in the conversation, something like laughter rippled through their harmonies. Then let us begin the greatest symphony ever attempted. Let us sing a song of such beauty and power that even the silence must pause to listen. The weeks that followed transformed both species. Human creativity merged with Kethmoran biotechnology, producing ships that were part machine, part living organism, part pure artistic expression. The survivors from a dozen hidden bases emerged from hiding, their numbers swelling as they joined the unprecedented alliance. Children born after Earth's fall took their first steps on bioships that responded to their emotions, while elderly humans shared stories with alien elders who had witnessed the birth and death of galaxies. At the center of it all, Jackson and Zara's love became a symbol of what was possible when two different forms of consciousness chose trust over fear. Their quarters aboard the hybrid vessel Harmony were a blend of human comfort and alien beauty. Walls that pulsed gently with bioluminescent patterns, furniture that adjusted itself to their moods, air that carried the subtle perfumes of flowers that bloomed in dimensions beyond normal space. "Do you think we'll survive this?" Zara asked one night as they lay intertwined beneath sheets that felt like spun starlight. "I think," Jackson replied, tracing patterns on her bare shoulder that mimicked the alien scripts they'd learned to read, "that we've already survived the impossible. Everything after this is just details." She laughed, the sound bright and clear, in the softly glowing chamber. "Just details? The possible end of all consciousness in the universe? Love is stronger than endings," he said, rolling over to look into her eyes. "It creates something new even when everything else is destroyed. We proved that when we found each other in the ruins of Earth. We're proving it again now." Their lovemaking that night was desperate and tender, an affirmation of life in the face of approaching oblivion. Every touch, every whispered endearment, every moment of connection became an act of rebellion against the force that sought to reduce all existence to silence. When the silence finally arrived, it came not as ships or weapons, but as a void in reality itself, a spreading darkness that consumed light, matter, energy, and even the concepts that gave them meaning. Stars went out not by exploding but by simply ceasing to have ever existed. Planets became blank spaces where nothing had ever been. The very memory of their existence began to fade from the minds of those who had known them. But humanity and the Kethmoran were ready. Their combined fleet, 1,000 ships that sang with hybrid voices, met the advancing darkness with something unprecedented in the galaxy's history. Not weapons, but music. Not force, but meaning. They sang the stories of their species, the loves and losses and dreams and hopes that made existence worthwhile. They wove new narratives from the threads of their joined consciousness, creating patterns of such complexity and beauty that they took on lives of their own. Jackson stood on the bridge of the Harmony, Zara's hand in his as they added their voices to the greatest chorus ever assembled. Around them, the crew, human and Kethmoran together, poured their hearts into the song, each note a defiant declaration that consciousness would not go gentle into that dark night. The silence paused. For the first time in its eons of existence, the force of absolute ending encountered something that refused to be ended. The hybrid songs wrapped around it like chains of pure meaning, not seeking to destroy it but to transform it, because the humans had taught the Kethmoran something crucial, that even destruction could be creative if approached with enough love and imagination. In the end, the silence did not retreat. Instead, it learned to sing. The entity that had consumed galaxies discovered harmony, found in the blended voices of two desperate species something it had been seeking without knowing, the music that had been missing since the universe first learned to speak. It joined its voice to theirs, deep and resonant, turning the song of survival into a symphony of transformation. When the music finally faded, the galaxy had changed forever. The silence became the deep song, a force of creative destruction that swept through the cosmos, bringing new forms of existence in its wake. Humanity and the Kethmoran became the gardeners, seeding young civilizations with the gift of harmony, teaching them to sing their stories into the void. And at the center of it all, two human hearts beat in rhythm with each other and with the vast, impossible music of a universe that had learned to love. Jackson and Zara stood together on the observation deck of their new home, a living ship that grew and changed with their dreams, watching new stars being born from the cosmic song they had helped to compose. Their children played at their feet, human and alien friends tumbling together in games that spanned dimensions, their laughter adding bright notes to the eternal melody. "Was this what you dreamed of?" Zara asked, "when you kissed your wife goodbye that last morning?" "No," Jackson admitted, pulling her closer. "This is better. This is hope made real. This is love becoming the foundation of something greater than either of us could have imagined alone." She turned in his arms, her eyes reflecting the light of impossible stars. "Then let's keep dreaming, let's keep singing, let's keep choosing love over fear, creation over destruction, harmony over silence." Their kiss tasted of starlight and infinity, of endings that became beginnings and love that transformed the very nature of existence itself. Around them, the universe sang its approval, and humanity, battered but unbroken, transformed but still, essentially human, sang back. The story was far from over. It was just beginning. The end.